You are listening to the Fairness Doctrine on CyberstationUSA.com. Patrick, take it away.
And we're talking with Dr. Sex, Dr. Judith Reisman, and we're talking about Planned Parenthood. And she was about to make a point, and I wanted to give her an uninterrupted time to make her point. And then we have a lot of emails, Judith, so go for it.
Oh, yeah. Well, this sort of thing just draws up so much response. As I said in the beginning, when Planned Parenthood came around and I was at university doing my PhD, I thought, oh, that is really good. These folks are going to be in there telling the truth about sex. It turns out that they were not. They never have been. And right now, they are paying the price. Suddenly, we're seeing all this information about prostitution, don't engage in prostitution, however they put it. And condoms are really so important and all this sort of thing, and don't have sex until you're married. Oh my goodness! I can haul out all the brochures and the articles and the booklets that Planned Parenthood has put out, also recommending that children use pornography, because what they said was that will help them to enlarge their experiences or whatever it was. I don't remember, but I have all the documentation and other things I've written, and they're talking about recommending pornography. Well, it's also significant that Playboy magazine had given money to Planned Parenthood in the beginning, as well as to SICUS, and Sex Information Education Council in the United States. So these are very important issues, and that is why I say, Chuck, really, I would love to see this in a courtroom. Look, this is a serious accusation that I have made. I don't want to trivialize it. It is serious, and it is serious because, by golly, it belongs in a court of law where the American public has an opportunity for the first time to view all of the arguments, all of the evidence on the tape, so that decisions can be made by a jury system. Yes, let's do it.
Okay. We've got a number of emails. One of them is entitled, Go Get 'em, More Bible Thumpers. I suspect that the emailer there thinks that you're a fundamentalist Christian. Do you want to respond?
Well, yeah, my response would be you're kind of a liberalist, a jerk guy who just goes by whatever they've been trained by. And I would say no, not at all. I mean, I was raised, as we were talking about off the air, I was raised, an atheist, and grew up having to come to a place where I had to look at all the information. I believe that I bring to these issues a very wide body of experience which examines the history of Judeo-Christian belief system and contrasts that belief system across the board with the belief systems of other societies, and comes up saying, hey, what we had before was pretty good. It wasn't perfect by any means, but we've been breaking it. And, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So I would say to the person who came up with the cliche, the Bible thumping thing, yeah, the Bible thumping thing, to go back and start rereading and start thinking and start examining. And if I had you in a court of law, and if I put you on that jury stand, Mr. whoever it was that is upset about Bible thumpers, if I put you in that jury stand and I presented to you the evidence that I believe we could present, I say you would vote on our side.
Okay, all right. We have an email here from Dottie who says, some teens will have sex no matter what we tell them. Why shouldn't they know about condoms?
Well, first of all, because condoms don't work in a significant percentage of the time. Number two, they aren't used. I've forgotten, but it's enough. But the second thing is they really aren't used, okay? They may be used once or twice. They aren't used consistently. Third thing is that these children have been told for years now also to engage in oral sodomy and, in the other side of the body, sodomy as well. And we're not talking about using condoms under those circumstances, and those are highly effective activities to engage in. And of all things, well, these children are being told that this is okay, where they're not being really look, if you want to educate children about sex, you start training them the way you read them Abigail's letters, you read them Shakespeare. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy. You show them Popeye and what's her name, Olive Oil, because that and the little baby. I mean, there are different ways to approach training kids. I'll tell you how I learned about sex. I said to my grandmother one day, I said, Grandma, you had 13 children, and I was a kid. 13 children. I said, how come you had 13 children? And she said, let me explain to you, Judith, about sex. And I said, okay. And she said, your grandfather, we lived in a very poor place, and the place would shake every day because the train would go by. He would go to work at 7:30 or at 7 o'clock, and the train would come by at 6 o'clock, and it would shake the whole house. And I said, yeah. And she said, and that is how we had 13 children. And I said, oh, okay. Now it may not sound, but I got the idea. And believe me, I never had to have any STDs or any other, infections. And people, MOM and DAD did a pretty good job before Planned Parenthood PP came on the stand. And we know that by the hard data. The hard data tell us that back in 1940s and 50s and 60s, even to the 60s, we had virginity. Come on. We know the data on virginity in college at that time. And guess what? You don't get STDs and you don't have out-of-wedlock pregnancies when you have sex appropriately, and that is not what Planned Parenthood has been training the kids with at all. And so we were doing better before, and we ought to go back because it weren't broke and we shouldn't have fixed it.
And then we have a third emailer here from Rain, and Rain says, you sound like you're anti-gay, are you?
Now, okay, anti-gay. You're talking about anti-homosexual. No, I'm talking about, let's talk about what causes homosexuality, and they're not doing that. Our data are very
causes?
clear.
I don't think anything. Nothing causes. People are born gay. No, I'm going to
go, Pat, with the born gay business. Give me a break.
No, you are anti-gay, so we'll leave that one alone.
No, we will
wait
not.
a minute, Patrick. Let me weigh in here.
Okay,
I don't
Chuck.
think. First of all, if the listener or if the earlier email listened to yesterday's show, they would know that I am proudly a Bible thumper. But putting that aside, Patrick, I don't know if the controversy of nature versus nurture with regard to gay activity is something that's hard science, and I don't think that somebody who comes down on one side or the other on that should be called anti-gay.
Correct. Thank you.
Okay. Good point.
Let me make something very clear. We've had, in 1994, we had 7,000 boys who were dying of AIDS, all right? Well, when the day comes that we've had 7,000 adults who basically had infected these boys, arrested for sexual assault of these boys, I will be able to pay more attention. My concern has always been the health and welfare of children, and I do not see the prosecution of homosexual males for sex with boys. What they do is they call the boy gay, and they just say, well, he was born gay. I'm sorry, my research, I've done extensive research on homosexuality using the homosexual literature, not any other literature. And the data are very clear that we have a huge problem here that nobody wants to address.
Hello?
We've gotten politically correct. And who's suffering for that? The kids are. And that is not excusable on any propagandistic level. And by the way, back to the Bible something. As far as I am concerned, as I said, to denigrate somebody's belief system and their opinions because they are Bible believers is the most propagandistic and ignorant kind of idea I have ever heard.
Yeah. It's also anti-religion.
A couple of points here, and then, a couple of points here. First of all, I noticed that the health guidance for website, which is generally pretty scientifically accurate, says that condoms properly used will prevent pregnancies 95% of the time. And in my review of the literature on homosexuality, it's not determined whether or not it's genetically inherited or it is part of the environment or the way people were raised. That there are studies that show both on both sides. So I'm going to have to give you that it's not clear either way.
as nice as you shifted that one. But yes, I mean, I've studied homosexual issue for years, and the reason I studied it was because when I finished my research for the U.S. Department of Justice on Playboy, Penthouse, and Hustlers' promotion of children as sexual targets, I was very confused as to why the homosexual movement was so angry at me at the same time. So I began redirecting my research to look at what was going on within that movement, and did a lot of, it's on my website, an analysis of the Advocate in Search of Advertisements versus the Washingtonian, so that we could get some objective information. And I think that's been very helpful, but of course it's not reached the public widely. And it should, because whatever affects children ought to be known by the public at large.
And I'd like to point out, though, that every gay person I know, including members of my family, knew they were gay from childhood. It had nothing to do with how they were raised, but that's anecdotal evidence. Moving on.
Very anecdotal, yeah, with all due respect.
We should probably get back to Planned Parenthood at some point here.
No, well, we really are sort of still there
Let me just chime in here for a second. And I think
Go ahead, Chuck.
When you get down to it, Judith, what you're talking about is protecting the innocence of children. And I think that a moral society, and in the United States traditionally has done that as a matter of rote. And when you say protecting the innocence of children, I suppose on the left their main concern is keeping them from cigarettes. But it's a much bigger question than that. I mean, a moral society protects children from sexual matters until they reach an age that's well beyond post-puberty, and that has been eroded by groups like Planned Parenthood. Now, Patrick, if you want to talk about Planned Parenthood giving breast exams, that's fine. I think that they probably do good work there, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about what they're teaching children in schools and whether or not taxpayers should be paying for that.
Well,
yeah,
actually,
exactly. I couldn't agree with you more. That if they would confine themselves to breast, to serving adult women for those kinds of tests, then they could do that. But I call them planned promiscuity, not Planned Parenthood. They have been anti-parent from the beginning, and right now they're caught between a rock and a hard place, and that is the reason that a lot of their material starts to act as though it has always advocated that children try to retain their virginity or something. And virginity was a very valuable commodity for all kinds of reasons, not just because it was healthier and all that sort of thing, but there's a lot of other historical reasons for that.
Yes, it was one of the ways It was one of the ways in which we turned women into property. But unfortunately, we have to. We've run out of time now.
Wait a minute. Judith, stay with us.
We'll have to pick that up after the break. We have to take a real quick break.
That was a dirty trick. Okay.
No, it wasn't a dirty trick either. You just said that.
Did you feel that way, Patrick, in your own family?
Tell people where they can get your. We have to tell people where they can get your book.
Oh, yes, please do. Yeah, WorldNet Daily. Just go on WorldNet Daily or go to your local, bookstore, too, and tell them sexual sabotage, my friends, because that is what we're talking about. And by the way, I know I have a lot of work in there on Planned Parenthood in that book.
Okay, well, that's Dr. Sex. Judith, thank you so much for being with us today, and this has been a very stimulating conversation.
Thank you, Judith.
Well, we tried. Thank you.
And we'll be right back.